everyone to another episode of the Love Approach Project podcast. This is your host, Laura Gutierrez, and today we are going to be talking about how to find balance with ancient remedies. So yes, we are going to be talking about acupuncture and Chinese medicine, some of my favorite modalities. And my guest today is Rachael Haley. Did I say your name right?
You did.
Oh,
yes.
good. And Rachael is a registered acupuncturist and Chinese herbalist, also known as a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. And she has been practicing or working in the healthcare industry since 2005, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Rachael has an interest in women's health, fertility, pregnancy support, and also in pain and stress management. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that today. Rachael also she currently practices from her own clinic in Bondi. And we're just going to get right into this topic now, right? Yeah, lovely. So welcome, Rachael.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you for inviting me to have a chat and have this conversation.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you for saying yes. So, as always, I love to begin by learning a little bit more about you and about your healing art. So, tell us a little bit about your story with acupuncture and what took you there.
Well, I guess my first introduction to acupuncture was when I was about 11 years old.
Wow.
I was doing a lot of athletics for school at the time, and I had been complaining of a sore ankle to my mum. You know, it was probably maybe slightly hypochondriac, but I had this trouble with this ankle, and where there was a sports medicine sort of clinic on the way home from school that offered acupuncture and Chinese medicine. So my mum took me along there. She hadn't had acupuncture before, but I guess she was drawn to take me there and see what happened. So I think I had about 2 acupuncture sessions after school, probably within the space of about a week. And the second session was the night before my athletics carnival. So yeah, the next day I won my races and I had no pain, and I didn't have pain for weeks after that. So
wow.
I think for me it was like, oh, this is like maybe my competitive edge. Or like there's something to this.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess I was a believer from the beginning.
Yeah.
Even though I was a bit nervous the first time I had acupuncture, like I didn't look at the
needles
or anything. I remember just looking at the ceiling, like trying to distract myself, but it wasn't painful. And I think not only just obviously it worked for me, but I think the practitioner, like the space and the practitioner, the way I was made to feel like a whole person, and I think just taking into account your whole body and what I was eating at the time. I remember I was eating too many icicles at the time. That wasn't good for my muscles. And I think, this practitioner made me feel special, and it made me feel, I guess, more listened to, valued as a person. So I think, it was a combination of, yes, it worked for me, but also the way the medicine interacted with me, and that was obviously facilitated through that particular practitioner. So I think, that exposure very early on set me up to kind of be curious. I asked a lot of questions, and I think just, over the years, every time I had like a little niggle or health complaint, I would ask my mum to take me to get acupuncture. And I think it wasn't, I think it was maybe in my late teens I had a bad case of bronchitis. I almost had pneumonia.
Wow.
And I'd had 2 courses of antibiotics. And I remember just saying to mum, like, I think I need to try Chinese herbs. And that was probably my first introduction to Chinese herbal medicine. So over the years, just that was kind of that was where I went to kind of feel better for many different things. But it was kind of like Yeah.
That was your go-to.
Yeah.
And then down the track, you decided to become a practitioner.
Well, yes. So I think this particular practitioner could see I was very curious.
Yeah.
I asked a lot of questions. I would remember the acupuncture point names as a teenager, and then he almost like treated me like a student of Chinese medicine before I even realized I was going to do that. So in a way, he was kind of ended up being sort of like a mentor.
Awesome.
Before I even realized, and in actual fact, it was really sad because I was in my first year of studying the traditional Chinese medicine degree, and he passed away, and it was like really kind of made me realize how much an impact just that whole experience had, put me on that trajectory of studying and becoming Chinese medicine practitioner.
Wow, I love what you just said there, because we don't realize sometimes the impact that we can have on other people when we do the things that we love.
Yeah. I think, and I think he was obviously very passionate about, and he could see a spark in me that was like curious and so, and I did some study before Chinese medicine in myotherapy, and he treated me like a student even during that period of time. Like I would pop into the clinic and he would introduce me to patients if they felt comfortable and show me different things. And
that's amazing.
So I was very lucky to have that kind of exposure, because it is it's tricky to find a good mentor.
Oh my goodness, and someone who is willing to hold your hand and actually show you, from an early age.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, beautiful. So we can say you have added experience.
Well, just experience, growing up experience, and like awesome. You kind of absorb it, I think.
Of course.
More so.
Yes.
That kind of made it easier. I think when first year uni, you're kind of learning this whole different way of looking at the body, and it's a very different medical model to the biomedical Western model. And I think for a lot of students struggle that first year just getting their head around the concepts, because it's just so different. Whereas I think having had that experience early on, I was just like, it is what it is. Like, it's just
it's kind of second nature for you. Wow, beautiful, beautiful. So I have many questions for you today.
Okay.
I would actually love to talk about why, from the point of view of traditional Chinese medicine, it is important for us to find balance to live a healthy life.
Yeah, so I guess from a Chinese medicine point of view, the main aim is to get the body back into balance, and that sort of sounds quite vague, but I guess if you look back onto like ancient Chinese culture, there was a heavy influence on the environment, like the weather and how it would impact us, what we were eating, like seasonally, our emotions and how that could affect the body. And many sort of, Chinese wives' tales are very much ingrained into the medicine, or vice versa. They sort of, for instance, like, I guess before, we had globalization, like you'd be growing food that was in season, eating it in that season, and local. And that was like, that was kind of, I guess, considered a balanced form of living. And they also recognized, excess emotions and things, or could have an influence on your body. So it's hard to say exactly where it all came from, but it's I guess that emphasis on balance. If it's you kind of eat something like that's super cold, like watermelon, only in summer when it's the peak of summer.
Okay.
Whereas in Australia we can buy watermelon in winter. And so I guess this can cause issues with the body, like imbalances and things, and our lifestyle and things have changed a lot. So it's sort of about really helping the body adapt to those changes around us, whether that be emotion, whether the foods we're eating. So, and that is considered, you know, being the body's ability to adapt and to stay in balance is considered good health. So,
okay.
yeah.
Yes. So good health comes from being able to take into account all these different aspects, from emotions to food to a mental state, I would say also, and then having everything working together, or everything.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess to some degree you can't control like all these elements, but our body's ability to remain like in homeostasis or a level of balance or adaptability, so that nothing goes too extreme. You know, for instance, like blood pressure or something like that. You know, we might get shock or something happens and it temporarily goes up, but it's the body's ability to come back to kind of equilibrium is considered good health.
Okay.
Because we can't control everything around us.
Yeah, of course. And so basically the challenge is to help ourselves always come back to that, let's say, kind of like neutral place. Could we call it like that?
Yeah, neutral, balance, center, coming back,
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. And so how does acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine help us, or can help us go back to that place?
So basically in Australia we know Chinese medicine to mainly be acupuncture and maybe Chinese herbal medicine.
Yes.
So typically a practitioner will meet with the patient client and discuss what their main complaints are. There might be one, there might be five, and it's sort of like we're trying to establish what the pattern of disharmony is happening in the body. So that's the first priority when someone comes in for a treatment. We're kind of establishing what's going on for the person, where's the main imbalance. There might be several, it might be layered, but what's the priority to help this person regain balance? And that's usually done by asking a lot of questions about day-to-day things. Like they're like, oh, but I just came in for a headache. Why are you asking me about my bowel movements? But all of this information we collect about, sleep, digestion, whether you feel hot or cold. We collect all this information which helps us to establish where the imbalance is happening. And we also look at their tongue, get people to stick out their tongue, which often people don't realise they have to do. And we're sort of looking at the colour and the shape, if it's got cracks or thick coating, things like that gives us more information. And then some practitioners will take the pulse on each wrist. So there's sort of 3 main pulses on each wrist that correspond to different energy systems in the body. And then, some practitioners will also be a little bit more hands-on and feel the belly, or they might call it the hara, so they're feeling for tenderness or reflexes or tightness in the body. So it can be quite extensive, in an initial consultation, just to kind of establish what's happening. In the way we get the body back into balance is, what's the disharmony? What points could we use on the body to help regulate the body's energy? And in some cases, what herbs or herbal formula would be beneficial to get the body back into balance. So it's very different in the sense of the language that's used around how we sort of establish that pattern of disharmony, or a good example, a very common example in Western culture would be the liver energy is stuck, or liver qi stagnation. And that doesn't necessarily mean that by biomedical standards that the liver enzymes are out, or that there's actually something majorly wrong with the liver, but the energy flowing through the liver and the meridians, so the energies that flow through the body is somehow not flowing very well and a bit stuck.
Yeah.
And so in that sort of case, someone might have a whole range of symptoms. Just it depends on the individual. They might have headaches, PMS, back pain, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But we're establishing, okay, so if it's mainly a liver energy kind of issue, then we'll use points on the liver meridian, which is where that energy flows through the body to help it flow more freely.
Yeah.
And that tends to help the body rebalance, which inevitably alleviates their symptoms.
Of course. And so, okay, so many of the listeners already know what a meridian is because they've been listening to a few different podcasts, episodes. And so with acupuncture and both herbs or Chinese herbs, those points can be worked on, those points on the meridians, or points are only for acupuncture and then the herbs do something else?
Yes, so the points are acupuncture, and the herbs, like each individual herb is considered to have certain energetic qualities. So it might be hot or a cool herb.
Okay.
It might direct the body's energy inward.
Okay.
It might direct the body's energy up or down or outward. So if we had a cold or flu or something like that, herbs might be used to help the person sweat.
Okay, and get it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they have different energetic qualities, but typically herbs are used in a traditional kind of formula. So there's usually about 10 or 12 herbs in a formula that are used in a way that work together on the body. So it's not usually one herb for this, one herb for that. It's like there's this pattern of imbalance, and this formula is really good for rebalancing that pattern. So it's kind of just getting understanding what the main issue is.
Of course, and it's very holistic at the same time, right? Because it's if you have an issue, let's say in your liver or liver energy, it's not just your liver that is off, or it's all your systems. So I guess that working with the formula will support all of the body, right?
Yeah, well, it's more about finding that balance and really establishing where that main, because sometimes our bodies are pretty intelligent and they are always working to try and come back to balance. Yeah. So in a way, we want to do as less as possible to just help it find its way. And in some cases, that may not be acupuncture and Chinese medicine might not be enough. Like we need to factor in someone's lifestyle,
of course,
what they're doing at home. Are they under a lot of stress, or are they a shift worker, or there's so many variables, and I think that's another sort of element to what we factor in is understanding lifestyle, and maybe some changes need to happen at home, or maybe maybe there's a period which they have no control of changing their circumstances, so we're just helping the body stay in as much of balance as possible during that period of time until it passes. So
it means that the client or the patient needs to also take responsibility for the treatment and make the changes that they need to do, or make at home or in their own environment to be able to support.
Definitely. And also recognize where they maybe can't change their circumstances straight away. It might be that they have they've lost a loved one and they're grieving, and you can't just block that out. It's like there's a process, and it might mean they need a bit of extra support for as long as it takes for them to find their feet and feel back in balance again.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, let's move into a little bit more into stress, because one of the main focuses of this podcast is about stress and finding solutions to this. So how can traditional Chinese medicine, how can acupuncture help relieve symptoms or continuous stress and fatigue?
So it depends on how we look at the situation. Like if we're looking at it from the pattern of disharmony, it can very much vary. We don't have the same points we use for everyone that comes in stress. It might depend on if their liver energy's off, or their kidneys need supporting, or So it's again finding that balance. But when we look at how basically acupuncture really kind of taps into that autonomic nervous system. So you in the autonomic nervous system you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest and kind of keeps everything kind of ticking over like in balance. And then we have that fight or flight mode, which is that sympathetic nervous system response, which you know, I guess before modernization that would be to, you know, fight a tiger or hunt it down and, you know, or run away from it. You know, it's sort of like that instant, we need that quick response to get out of there. And
when it was needed.
When it was needed. And which meant that it would literally, these two systems are like a seesaw. So if the sympathetic nervous system switched on and we're in that fight or flight mode, our parasympathetic nervous system gets switched off. So that it's kind of like this balancing act between the two. So if someone is constantly in a state of fight or flight, which is not uncommon, and that might be, you know, work deadlines, stuck in traffic every day, you know, a horrible boss or someone at work, or you know, and they're constantly in that state, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the rest and recovery and the digestion, gets switched off. Someone might be suffering from, you know, digestive issues or not sleeping very well, or
so it can affect different parts for different people.
Totally. And I think the role of acupuncture is really to help modulate the nervous system and help that sympathetic nervous system switch off. More often than not, that's what we're looking for. And what you'll find is, like, I'll be palpating the body to feel like, okay, what points are we going to use today? Like, we're kind of doing a little investigation, and I won't even have put a needle in yet, and I'll hold a point and their tummy will just be like gurgle. And I know that I'm tapping into their parasympathetic nervous system is starting to switch back on. So that we will use that point. So it's really about tapping in and helping re-regulate the nervous system to help reduce those. I guess when we talk about stress, it really is that fight or flight mode.
And so is the nervous system like that main system that throws us out of balance? I mean, when we are either or, well, mainly on the sympathetic one, on the fight or flight mode. Like, is the nervous system the one that controls stress, let's say?
Well, I would say it's definitely the primary one. I mean, we have other systems like the endocrine system in the body that where our hormones can go out of balance and things like that. But I think more often than not we see it stemmed from that nervous system imbalance. And I think, you know, there's more and more research out there to kind of say how much stress impacts our health and different systems in the body. So ultimately I think, you know, if we can get the body's nervous system more regulated, everything else kind of falls into place.